This week on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Like, maybe there's something about me that is threatening. I literally don't know why you're so obsessed with my hair,
Brittney.
my trademarks, and my business moves, all of that. What's the deal?
There's no jealousy. I think I've been really nice to you.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be recapping the new episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Season 6, Episode 14. Let's get right into this. Okay, so the women are in Greece. This is the second episode of the cast trip and Angie's trip, which I do believe there is another episode next week, and then the finale is the following episode after that. So it's going to be really interesting. But yeah, this was a great episode. So it's very nice. They're in a great place. The ladies, you know, they have these insane, pretty views. So they're all waking up, and it's actually Mother's Day. Also, do y'all remember that a few weeks ago when they were at Bronwyn's Patriot Party, when all of them went around saying, hear ye, and like what their amendments were? Well, Bronwyn ended up printing out all of those amendments, although she mistakenly put commandments, but she did that, and she put everyone's picture and all the amendments. It's kind of like a chart, and she's going to like put a little check every time one of them breaks one of those amendments. So then they gather outside, eating some breakfast, saying Happy Mother's Day to each other. You know, it's Mother's Day, but they're not with their kids, which Heather did say that it's the best Mother's Day ever because she said that this is what Mother's Day should be like, where mothers are like somewhere very nice, having fun, away from it all. Which, you know what, I think a lot of mothers would probably appreciate that. And Brittney says to them, do y'all notice how we're all so happy and bright and having fun, and there's one person missing? The person missing is Meredith. She's inside. Heather says that earlier this morning she actually bumped into Meredith because they were all trying to make some coffee, but the coffee machine was not working, so Meredith just ended up going back upstairs. So they haven't really talked, and Heather feels some type of way about it. As for today, Angie says that Lisa, Bronwyn, Mary, and herself are going to go ride some donkeys, and then Meredith, Brittney, Heather, and Whitney are going to a cooking class. Now that is so shady because Meredith doesn't like any of the people that she's paired up with, that she's stuck with. So then Mary goes to check on Meredith inside. As soon as Meredith opened the door, I'm not gonna lie, I did feel really bad for her. Mary says, are you okay? And then Meredith's just like, I'm very tired. Like, I'm tired of being treated like I'm a piece of dirt on the ground. And Mary says, well, what do you want to do? And Meredith says, I don't know. I'm not in the mood to deal with them. I mean, Whitney, she's not my friend. And then Mary says, well, I do think that she hurt you and she has taken any accountability for that, but you need to say that to her. That's the only way we're going to move through it. So then they all get ready to head out. So they get on the Sprinter, and they're kind of going over again what they're going to be doing and what groups they're going to be splitting up in. So this is actually the first time Meredith hears who she's going to be with. So then Heather asks Meredith, how do you feel about this pairing? And then Meredith says, like, not very positive. You know, ever since the plane, it's clear that, you know, I'm told not to speak. I'm told that the way I speak is not okay, so I shouldn't speak. I guess I'm too educated and speak too eloquently for some people. So then Heather says, it's not about education. I'm educated too, okay? It's about you being pretentious and condescending, and you're not a good friend, and da-da-da-da-da. And then Meredith, in the middle of this argument with Heather, pulls out her phone, and she says that Brooks is calling her to wish her a happy Mother's Day. But they're kind of like wanting her to get off the phone because, again, her and Heather were literally in the middle of an argument. So then Meredith says to Brooks, I love you. I'm getting yelled at to hang up the phone on you on Mother's Day. Classic Meredith. So she does hang up, and she tells him that she'd rather be with her family than here, which I totally get that. Lisa, on the other hand, she says, not me. I love Greece. I love my kids too. I mean, sorry, but I love being here too. Heather then says to Meredith, look, I'm upset that you said all these things about me and you tried to get out of it instead of apologizing, and now I'm in trouble for you not being okay, but I'm not okay. And then Meredith says, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. And then Heather's like, well, what about Whitney and Brittney? What do you have to say to them? Heather, you're doing way too much. So Lisa says, well, when it comes to Whitney, I think it's clear why Meredith is upset with her. I mean, Whitney did call her, and then here come the cousins. They're like, let Meredith speak, Lisa. Don't speak for her. And then Whitney says to Meredith, why do you think I'm always after you, Meredith? And then Meredith says, you are, Whitney. You're constantly spreading rumors, saying that I have mental health, addiction, substance abuse issues. I'm not interested in your opinions of me, with your projection and your lies. And then Whitney says, well, I'm not lying. Can you help me understand what you're mad about? And then Lisa says, well, because you called her a pill popper. You say she was a cheater, alcoholic. Like, it's not that hard or difficult to understand why Meredith's mad at you, Whitney. Whitney says, well, this is so unfair to me. Okay, I'm over Whitney. She's doing way too much too. Whitney and Heather, bad weather, spin the truth, tornado, as Lisa said in season 1. I'm over them. So then they get to where the place that they were heading to, so that's where the groups actually separate. Now Meredith walks away. She was walking who knows where, but Heather, Whitney, and Brittney, they go to their cooking class. So then poor Meredith is kind of in the middle of somewhere in the streets. So the other ladies go to ride the donkeys, and I gotta say, Lisa, Lisa's so unique. That's all I can say. Her commentary was just priceless. So they're riding the donkeys throughout the town, which Angie says that's how her dad used to get around in his village when he was young. And the ride was it was a little bumpy because these donkeys had to get up a lot of stairs. So going back to the others, Meredith finally joins them. There's a chef teaching them how to, so there's like a cooking teacher, I guess, and there's the actual chef. And that man was the one that was kind of instructing them. He was so nice. And it was a nice cooking class because as the chef is cooking, the other guy's telling them what he's doing, sharing some stories, and the ladies get to do some stuff. They prepared this little dish that had like ground beef and like some like tomato with like eggplant. It looked good. And then I'm telling you, this guy was so nice. The older gentleman, he goes up to Meredith and he says, are you okay? What's happening? How can I help you? And then Meredith says, oh, you're so kind. Unfortunately, some of the other women haven't been kind. I miss my son. It's Mother's Day. I won't get to talk to him. It's sad. And then he says, well, wine makes us happy. Have some wine. Then Heather butts in and she's like, well, she's not happy, but it's going to be okay. So then Meredith says, no, it's not going to be okay. It's not changing. Brooks is on a plane now. I won't get to speak to him. That was my only chance to speak on him on Mother's Day. Then Brittney's like, well, I didn't speak to my kids for 3 years, so that made me laugh. This episode made me laugh a lot because it was so unbelievable what was going on. So then Meredith's like, of course it's about you. It was so dramatic. It was so dramatic. And then back with the other ladies, the ones who were riding the donkeys, they talk a little bit about Meredith and her problems with the 3 ladies that she stuck with. And Angie and Bronwyn do suggest to Lisa that she shouldn't really fight for all of Meredith's battles. Like, let her fight them by her own. Mary says that she's praying for Meredith because she does feel like something is off. She's feeling something. So then the ladies that were riding the donkeys joined the ladies that were taking the cooking class so they can all eat lunch. So they're talking about what they did. Heather's like, wow, y'all have a lot of energy. Like, y'all must have had a lot of fun, unlike us. So then Mary says, well, did you guys get anywhere? Like, did y'all talk about anything? And then Heather says, well, Meredith expressed that she's upset about Mother's Day. You want to tell them about that, Meredith? And then Meredith says, yeah, I just didn't get to talk to my son. It's Mother's Day, and that would have been nice for me. So then Heather says, well, join the club, but that's not true. You're upset about all of it. And then Meredith says, of course I'm upset about all of it. And then Lisa says, well, I do think that you're upset about everything else, not just Mother's Day. And then Meredith's like, oh my gosh, can I not be mad for like 5 minutes or upset? And then Heather says, you don't get to use that Mother's Day thing to detour everything else that happened. We all knew that we were going to be here during Mother's Day. We chose to come here, so you don't get to use that as an excuse. And then Lisa is like, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we got to go back to the very beginning, which is really Whitney and Meredith. So then Whitney says to Meredith, Meredith, look at me. I'm sorry I called you names. A pill popper and alcoholic. It's not appropriate. I'm sorry. And then Meredith says, okay, great. So then they get back to the van to head back, and they talk about some weird stuff like bowel movement and things like that, which they were all kind of just having some fun. And then they head back to the place where they're actually staying, and they all go to the pool, and then they all like Meredith's swimsuit. She had a little bit of a reveal. So Meredith seems to be a little bit better now. She does have a more positive tone. They're even racing in the pool, and they're laughing. They're having a lot of fun. Some flowers came in for Meredith that came from Brooks and Chloe, so that was nice. She's definitely feeling a little bit better. And then they started to talk about like some unserious things like school, growing up, when did they get their first kiss. Because remember, Angie and Heather went to the same school, so Angie's telling them about the guy who Heather dry humped back in the day. And then Bronwyn's going off about kissing girls, and she's done more than just doing that with girls. So then Whitney and Bronwyn kiss, which none of the other ladies say that they've ever kissed a girl, but Brittney does say that she has kissed 367 men, which she keeps them all on a spreadsheet. But she says that's all they do, just kiss. Which, if you're just kissing someone, I guess that's not as bad as actually going all the way, but you never know. You probably could catch something, especially if you're doing it with 367 men. And they're also talking about things that they did when they were kids. And then Meredith is telling this story about how when she was younger, she threw this party, and her mom's never known this, but she actually found a broken dish the next day, and it was because of the party that she threw. And it was so funny because the way Meredith was telling the story, it sounded like she was setting it up to be something like she did, like that was really, really bad, but it really wasn't. But then it's time for them to get ready for dinner, and Mary is not going to join them. She says that she's very tired, so she's going to skip tonight. But everybody else heads out. When they're on the little sprinter to dinner, they're kind of just joking, and Lisa makes reference to high body count. Remember, we know all about high body count hair. So Brittney says, oh, did y'all know I actually trademarked high body count? They're like, are you serious? She was like, yeah. And then Angie says, Brittney, why would you do that? Brittney says, well, I'm the one who took it on the chin. And then Angie says, well, I think it's very embarrassing that you took something that someone else said and got a patent for it. And then Heather says, I mean, are you not flattered by it, Angie? And Angie says, no. I mean, I'm not mad about it. I just think that it's embarrassing and weird. Brittney says, well, I mean, I'm the one who had the hair like that. And then Angie says, well, your hair has gotten better, but it still looks too long for your age and does look cheap. So Angie was upset. And so then they arrive to the place. It's like a cool restaurant. It was almost like a clubbish vibe, but also a restaurant. Meredith says that her and Bronwyn are coming together for a new business venture. So Bronwyn has this little bag that's in the shape of a drink. Meredith had asked, does the little straw work? Bronwyn was like, oh no, but it would be cool if there was a little flask inside of it. So they're deciding to come together and patent the phrase, ting, 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 I don't have an announcement, because it's like a little secret flask. Obviously, that little ting, 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 I have an announcement, that's Brittney's line. So everybody's like, oh, okay, that's cool, whatever. But then Angie brings it back to Brittney and says, Brittney, I still think that's really embarrassing of you. Like, are you proud of yourself? You're acting like if you're the one that came up with it. And then Brittney says, yeah, I am proud of it. And Angie says, proud of what? That you had a bad hair and that I said it? And then Brittney says, I think you might be jealous of my hair. Maybe something about you must threaten you, because something about me must threaten you because you're obsessed with my hair, my trademarks, my business. And then Angie's like, no, I've actually been very nice to you. So then Heather's like, well, not really. I mean, at the van, you were not that nice. And Lisa says, yeah, but it's kind of wild, kind of weird that she would trademark someone else's line. And And then Bronwyn says, well, Angie said it about me. Angie says, well, if somebody calls you a slut, are you going to own the word slut now? And then Brittney says, well, I guess I was just smarter than you, that I did it first. Angie's like, well, you sound like a fool now. So then Whitney says, okay, you guys, high body count is supposed to be funny. Let's not attack how Britney looks. So then Bronwyn's like, don't put me and Meredith in there. We didn't say anything about her looks. Don't lump us into that. And then Whitney's like, well, this is, look at where we're at. We're in Greece. Like, we got to enjoy it. Why are we talking about this? And I was like, now, Whitney, you're the last person to be talking about what not to be talking about. But that was the end of the episode. Was it the best episode of the season? No, it wasn't, but it was okay. Like I said, there were a few things that I definitely laughed at, only because they're so dramatic that it's almost hysterical. But yeah, this was a good episode. Nothing crazy, but it was okay. You know, I'm not mad at Brittney for trademarking that. Do I get why maybe it would have made more sense for Angie to trademark it? Yeah, but I mean, Brittney's got a point. They said it about her, and if she thought about it, then she thought about it. I mean, I don't know, but let me know what y'all think about that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. You have a great one. Bye.